I didn't believe it myself, well, at least at first. Even when I saw the evidence with my own eyes, I knew there had to be a logical explanation. I knew the real truth, but I was the only one who believed in that truth. I don't remember much of what happened that night, only that Kevin was officially sent from the ranks of the carefree and lonely to the ranks of the married bliss. For me, it all started a week after Kevin and Amy returned from their honeymoon. 4 months later, it's still not over. Kate was going to get her pound of meat from me at any cost. In court, I would say, guilty as charged, but I would also put myself at the mercy of the court. Even some criminals receive amnesty if they cooperate with the court and do what is necessary to make amends for their crimes. Don't I deserve the same treatment? I didn't kill anyone, although I guess what I did, or what was done to me while I was under the influence, still wasn't a good enough defense. Leavenworth and even Alcatraz would have been a walk in the park compared to the prison she sentenced me to. For months I had been hoping for early release for good behavior or a pardon from the governor, but none of that materialized. I was facing life without parole unless I could convince the prosecutor to drop the charges. But she didn't listen. So I made a deal and split up. Now I was free. Or did I really exist, and even if I did, at what cost? We booked several hotel rooms. None of us went anywhere that night. Thanks to the open bar in the party room we rented, the alcohol flowed freely, and after just 2 hours in the morning I was already over my usual limit. Take 17 crazy guys, add an open bar, some card games, add 2 strippers, and finally add the video capabilities of their smartphones, and you have a recipe for disaster. And it became a disaster. The last thing I vaguely remember was participating in a beer drinking competition. I was told that I came in 4th place out of 5 guys because my last breath, instead of going down my throat, came out of my nose when I ran out of air. I never drank much, and I know for a fact that I threw up somewhere that evening, although even that memory is somewhat sketchy. When the party ended, someone must have laid me down on one of the beds, because the next morning I woke up lying on my back in one of the rooms. For a brief moment I thought I had died, or regretted it, but found that it was incredibly painful to even blink, let alone breathe. The groom-to-be was still unconscious on the bed next to me, and the other 2 were on the floor. I guess they didn't make it to the other bed last night. That must have been one hell of a way to end the party. It's a pity that I don't remember much of this. I somehow managed to call room service. I ordered a couple cups of black coffee for each room and carefully headed to the bathroom. Looks like I wasn't the only one who made a deposit. There was vomit in both the toilet and the sink. And the smell? Well, let's just say that what is in a person's stomach should remain in a person's stomach, and will remain so. I cleaned it as best I could, knowing that the maid would have to do the rest with guilt. I spent the next 10 minutes in the shower trying to wash myself with the tiniest bar of soap on the planet, dropping it so many times that I finally just sat on my butt on the floor of the tub and called it a day. I flossed and brushed my teeth, but there was still a bad taste in my mouth. I needed coffee, lots of coffee. One by one, the zombies began to move, I would say, rather ungracefully. It was surprising that after last night they were still breathing less while standing, let alone walking. No one spoke. I'm not sure if they ever could, but it hasn't happened yet. With 2 pots of coffee under their belts and a couple more bathroom breaks, the dead began to come back to life. I called the front desk and asked for a late checkout. The girl behind the counter laughed and said that she had already signed us up for one. She asked if we needed body bags. We seemed to make quite an impression. Luckily, I brought clean clothes with me. Most of the others didn't, and regretted it this morning. Kevin was still beside himself. Finally, I checked his pulse to make sure he was still alive. It was weak and slow, but he would make it to his wedding next Saturday. The icy cloth on his forehead brought him back to life with such a jolt, as if he had been hit with a defibrillator. Guys, we have to leave here in an hour, so I strongly recommend that we move on. Gary threw up one more time in the toilet just in case. David stood motionless, looking out the window with a cup of coffee in his hand, and Kevin finally sat up, placing a rag on the back of his head. He gave up coffee, but luckily used the mouthwash in the bathroom. This morning my duty was to return him to the apartment. 15 minutes later, I checked the other 3 rooms, and like ours, there were many near-death experiences. Finally, everyone straightened up and began to move, but not very quickly or steadily. On the way out, I slipped the housekeeper a couple of 20s and told her, "Sorry." In the car, I left the window open, watching as Kevin put on his seatbelt, closed his eyes, and went back to sleep. I just prayed that he wouldn't get sick in my car. At 32, Kevin was the last member of our group to finally tie the knot. He and Amy had been together for 3 years, living together for 2 years, when suddenly he decided to propose to her. "It's time," was the only reason he gave. Instead of having this huge formal gala, they decided to have a small intimate wedding, limiting it to immediate family and close friends. They decided that instead of spending a ton of money on a huge wedding, they would be better off putting it toward a down payment on a sweet home they had their eye on. They continued to live together. Amy told Kevin to get everything out of his system the night of his bachelor party because 7 days later he was hers forever. She didn't like to drink, didn't allow anyone to smoke in her apartment, and was going to try her best to keep the confirmed bachelor in line after the wedding. So Kevin was told he had 1 night, and 1 night only, to blow off some steam and get everything out of his system. And he did just that. I don't know who brought these 2 girls, but they were not nuns. Kevin tried their products at least once that night. The blonde had to be no older than 22, and the black girl a couple of years older. They looked good, were designed for comfort, and weren't shy at all, if you know what I mean. I saw a lot of guys fooling around with one guy or another, but I stayed away, preferring to eat snacks and use the open bar. There was no way I was going to ruin what was waiting for me at home. In addition, it was quite difficult for me to stand, much less do anything else. A few days later, someone told me that the bartender had forced my drunken body into a chair during one of the card games. This answered the nagging question of what happened to the $50 I had brought to play. As I said at the beginning, you should never drink alcohol and use mobile phones at the same time. People were going crazy, making videos, and a lot of people ended up going crazy and doing things they wouldn't normally do. Not me, I was too drunk. So, after dropping Kevin off at his apartment, I returned home, leaving that drunken night behind me, I thought. The wedding was informal and fun. Amy wanted to do it on the beach at sunset, but getting permission from the city turned out to be a nightmare. When she was informed that they would also need an on-duty police officer, and that they would be required to pay him, they changed their plans slightly. So, at 8:30 on a Saturday night, a week after the bachelor party, 36 people went to the beach, had a short impromptu wedding ceremony, and then everyone headed to a local restaurant where they had rented space. The food was delicious, the party was fun, and 2 hours later the bride and groom left for parts unknown. Everything went without a hitch. When Kevin returned from his honeymoon, we guys got together. Some idiots showed everyone some videos they made. Kevin told them it would probably be best if they removed them. "Guys, it was a hell of a party, but I'm married now and I really don't want to piss off my new fiancé." He took his beer. "Here's to Amy and my long and fruitful life with her," he shouted as everyone toasted his new wife and their future together. Life was good. One can only guess how the photos and videos ended up online. No one would admit it, and it could only be one of the 16 guys who were there. No, make it 15 because I know I didn't videotape anything and Kevin sure as heck wouldn't have. No matter who made it or for what reason, the videos took on a life of their own. One wife saw them on her husband's phone, then another, and finally everyone at the damn party had to answer sensitive questions about what happened that night and who did what. Kevin personally called and scolded each of us, not knowing who was to blame. "Kevin, do I have a stupid tattoo on my forehead?" This is how I answered his questions. "I was unable to do anything that evening. Although if it were me, I'd ask these 3 guys from your work. I've heard a lot of guys say that they always have their cell phones in their hands and text most of the night. Steve, I didn't think it was you, but I had to ask. Amy is angry not because I did anything, but what I did is now known to the whole world. She gets advice from everyone who has seen them about what to do with me. Damn, I hope you 2 don't break up over this. Now it's completely out of control. No chance. She told me I had a pass for the night from jail, but I would be on a short leash for a while. I was already at the clinic to get a damn blood test, to be on the safe side. It would pass for me, but there were a lot of other guys who had a lot of explaining to do. Did you accidentally interfere? Fortunately, I didn't do a damn thing. Hell, I was so drunk I probably couldn't do anything even if I wanted to. We both laughed at this. Well, I'll call a few of my buddies and find out why the hell they put these videos on YouTube. Some people just don't have common sense, you know that? I agreed with him on this issue. A couple of wives gave it up because their husbands were brain dead, others got angry, but a third group exploded. Thank God I didn't do anything. When Kate asked me about it, I said I didn't do anything. She smiled. That night we made love. Life was still good. On Thursday, Kate came home from work and asked point blank if I had seen the videos. No, to be honest, I didn't do this and I don't see any reason for it. I was there, so I think I know what's going on before I pass out. Well, Lori gave me a copy and she thinks I should watch one in particular. You can't think of any reason why I'd want this, can you? Honey, I've been a good boy all night, unless you think I went a little overboard. If you want to look at them, go ahead. This way you will see for yourself what I didn't do. At least for now I was the one smiling. I was cooking a couple of chicken breasts for dinner when I heard loud swearing coming from the den. My first thought was that my oldest, Gary, might be watching something on TV that he shouldn't be watching. I was about to correct him when my wife stormed past me, calling me a fucking asshole, along with some other words I couldn't catch as she ran up the stairs. Confused, I went into the office to find out what made her angry. The TV was still on, showing a video of Kevin's bachelor party. I rewinded it for about 5 minutes and started watching. The first thing I noticed was the noise, guys screaming and stumbling around the hotel room. Kevin was lying on the bed, clearly out of it, and I saw myself walking into the room, barely able to stay upright. The group appeared to have moved from the hall to one of the rooms. That's when I saw the strippers come in and things started to go south. The camera showed me lying next to the unconscious Kevin. I didn't move either, clearly snapping out of it, when one of the strippers started doing something I couldn't even think of. First the blonde went after Kevin and then, to my horror, the other girl knelt down next to me and did the same. I paused the video and watched it again in disbelief. How could this happen? I didn't remember any of this. Why was Kate so upset with Kevin? And then it dawned on me, she wasn't mad at Kevin, she saw what happened to me. 15 seconds on tape, but that was more than enough. I watched the clip again, trying to see if there was anything that would indicate that I was completely out of my mind. My eyes were open, but I didn't react at all. I could only guess that Kate didn't think so. That night I was locked in our bedroom. I ended up sleeping on the couch. After my last attempt to talk to her around 10:30, I wrote her a note explaining what I saw in the video and slipped it under the door. I spent the rest of the night scrolling through it all, hoping to find something that would prove I wasn't aware of what was happening. I didn't sleep for a second. The next morning, her only words were, "I don't want to talk about it," as she prepared the children's breakfast. I was completely useless at work and got home late, stuck in traffic. I stopped in my tracks, looking at her in disbelief. What do you mean? Where else should I sleep? You're not sleeping here. Not anymore. Kate stood with her arms crossed, her face cold and determined. You can take over the couch or the basement, but you don't go near that bed. Kate, stop it, don't act like that. I tried to reason with her, but from the look in her eyes I realized that there was no point in this. I meant what I said. You humiliated me in front of everyone. The fact that you don't remember doesn't change what happened. Every time I see you now, I think about this video. Kate, please. It wasn't what you think. I don't care anymore, Steve. She interrupted me, her voice trembling slightly. You screwed up. Maybe you were too drunk to know better, but I wasn't too drunk to see it. And I can't unsee it. So you sleep somewhere else. I wanted to resist, to keep arguing, but all I could do was stand there, feeling completely powerless. She turned away and, without saying another word, headed to the bathroom. I stood in the middle of my bedroom, a place that was once mine, feeling like an intruder in my own home. That night I slept on the couch again, staring at the ceiling for hours, knowing this was not something I could fix with words. "Going to bed, what does it look like?" "Here?" she answered immediately. "Yes, this is my bedroom too, and if you don't want me here, you can sleep in the office." There was no way I could sleep on that couch anymore. It was damn cold in our bedroom that night. She slept on her side of the bed and I slept on mine. This went on all weekend. We were alone in the house. I was glad to return to work on Monday and see some friendly faces. I talked to a few of my friends and discovered that there were several husbands in the dog house, including 2 others who had been kicked out of their homes and were now sleeping in motels. I knew that they were both doing something with the girls and they were imagining it, but I didn't do anything, well, at least not voluntarily. I still insisted on my innocence, and I was criticized more than once, but I did not back down. Perhaps this happened, but I did not remember it, although now I wish I could remember it. If I were forced to go through this, I would at least enjoy remembering it. This went on for the better part of a month. Our kids knew something was going on because I heard Kate tell my son more than once that Mom and Dad were fighting because Dad had done something very, very bad. Thank God no one knew what it was. I did everything I could to make it up to her. I cleaned, cooked dinner, washed her car, and even pulled the kids out of her hair whenever I could. I tried the flowers, but she threw them in the trash, and when I gave her a gift certificate to the spa, she tore it in front of me. I said the word sorry so many times that it lost its meaning and became almost a 4-letter word in her eyes. Looks like I'm going to be in trouble for a while. I took care of my sexual needs manually, having no idea what Kate was doing to satisfy herself. She had almost as much sex drive as I did, and she must have gone crazy after going to Zippo 3 times a week. I tried to make friends a couple of times, but got frostbite when I touched her. I don't think I've been forgiven yet. I let him go for another month. She was going out with her friends and I was going out with mine, but when I suggested an intimate dinner just for the 2 of us, I had every excuse except the real one. Over the past couple of months I have heard the words, bastard, fraud, asshole, and others. My patience was running out. It was the 2nd week of the 3rd month when I walked into the bathroom to find Kate tending to her needs with something long and silver that buzzed. She screamed at me to get out of here. I deliberately delayed my exit for a few more moments, then turned and left. If it was possible, it became even colder after that night. On Friday evenings, Kate began stopping over after work with several of her friends, probably to compare notes with the other wives and, I suppose, to argue with them about me. She came home not drunk, but not completely sober either. When it came to the point where I came home at 7 and didn't get home until after 9, I wasn't happy. Then one night when she didn't come home until almost 11 and was pretty drunk, I let it all go down the drain because she was driving home like that. It got ugly very quickly as all the dirt from the past was brought back up and thrown back in my face. That night I kicked her ass out of the bedroom. She kept knocking on our bedroom door for about 20 minutes, waking up our children in the process. Finally she left. Where at that moment I didn't care. She must have passed out somewhere. I didn't sleep a wink for another night. It became a bad habit. Her attitude and rudeness towards me finally reached its limit. I wasn't 100% innocent, but damn, I'm tired of paying for it. I'm tired of living with the Wicked Witch of the West. Kate was in great shape on Saturday morning. She was drinking coffee and waiting for me. I felt an icy gaze on my back as I poured myself a cup, hoping that this morning's conversation wouldn't turn as nasty as it had lately. I sat down opposite her at the kitchen table, looked into her cold blue eyes and gave her a full volley. "Mrs. Kate Moore, you have 3 days to make a decision. We can start talking and living like a married couple again. We can go to counseling to solve our problems, or we can separate and get divorced. Your choice. Are you threatening me?" She demanded an answer, sitting right at that moment. "No, especially telling you facts from life. I'm tired of living like this and I refuse to live anymore. So I'm letting you make a decision, but I'm only giving you 3 days to do it." So I remained calm. I didn't raise my voice and was as non-confrontational as possible while still getting my message across. I'm leaving the house this morning and giving you until 7 o'clock on Tuesday morning to give me an answer. That depends. Whatever you decide, I will do what is best for me. You're teasing me, right? She spat back. Are you kidding me and now giving me ultimatums? Steve, you don't have the courage to walk out that door. I didn't even finish my coffee. I just went to the sink and poured the rest down the drain. She followed me up the stairs to the hallway closet, where I pulled out one suitcase. If she thought I was bluffing, she was very mistaken. Throwing it on the bed, I packed 2 sets of work clothes and a couple of casual outfits for the rest of the weekend. I packed the razor, deodorant, and other toiletries I'd need, put the rest of my stuff on top, and closed it. She stood with her mouth open and said nothing. I was carrying my suitcase down the stairs when I saw my daughter and son watching us. Dad, don't go. Mom, tell him to stay, the son begged his wife. I kissed both children and hugged them tightly as they turned their attention to their mother, who simply looked at me almost in disbelief. As I threw my suitcase into the back seat of the car, I turned around and looked at Kate. There was nothing, not a drop of emotion on her face. The last word I heard from my daughter was the word, Daddy. Trying to control my emotions, I drove out of the garage and onto the street, heading towards the Red Roof Hotel on 12th Street. I turned off the phone. I didn't want to hear her rant anymore today. I spent the rest of the day sitting in my room, drinking quite a few cold drinks, watching college football, and feeling sorry for myself. I was right, wasn't I? Because I drank too many adult drinks, I fell asleep and skipped dinner. The next morning it was almost 9:30 when I finally woke up. I needed a shower and something in my stomach. I began to doubt my actions. They say you can't solve your problems if you don't talk, but we didn't even yell at each other anymore. We lived in the same house and even shared a bed, but we were not together. Did I overreact? Perhaps I should have given her more time to get over what happened, but after 4 months of hell, I was tired of it. What I really wanted was an immediate answer, while at the same time knowing that the answer I was likely to receive was one I probably wouldn't like. She knew what she wanted, and if she didn't, she had 72 hours to figure it out. I ate everything that wasn't on the breakfast buffet. I ate everything I was told was bad for me, and even ate bacon and sausage. I almost felt human again. Looking at my phone, I considered turning it on, but decided to wait a couple more hours. Both parents knew we had problems, and no matter how hard I tried to minimize them, my father saw right through it. One Sunday he finally cornered me on the street, and I told him the whole story, what was shown in the video, and my side of the story. I'm glad it's you and not me. Your mother would have made me a eunuch before I even woke up the next morning. He laughed. I tried, but it was no longer funny. I know Kate, she'll let you stew for a couple of weeks and then forgive you. Hell, if this is the worst thing you've ever done, consider yourself lucky. Flowers always did your mother good, and if it weren't for the chocolate and another amulet for her bracelet, it would have done the trick. How wrong he was. Now I was away and trying to figure out my next move. Let me rephrase that. The ball was in Kate's court and all I could do was wait. However, I know that I can no longer be a patient person. When I finally turned my cell phone back on, there were 2 calls from my son and nothing from Kate. Was I worried? Hell yeah, but I think she thought I was bluffing, and maybe I was a little bluffing. We just needed to get it off the ground and move forward, or should I say get back to where we were. Sunday was the most stressful and boring day of my married life to date. I was tired from football and I definitely wasn't going to get drunk at work tomorrow, so I vegetated, made some notes on how I thought we could get back to where we once were, and crashed early. Luckily, Monday arrived. Glad I'm finally busy because I'd go crazy if I didn't have anything to do. I was completely immersed in work and didn't even take a break for lunch. I was still going strong when my boss told me to get the hell out of here and go home to my lovely wife. This, my friends, should not have happened, at least not that night. A couple of guys asked if I wanted to stop after work to catch a little cold. So, for the first time in a couple of years, I took it on. I had a great time. We gave a few tips and even stopped for dinner. It was almost 8 o'clock when I returned to my motel room. I flipped through the programs on cable. Nothing interested me. Tomorrow was my day of reckoning, and I had no idea what Kate was going to do. I turned on the phone and saw that there were still no messages from her. If she wanted to make me sweat, she did a good job. Sleep eluded me again as I stared at the bedside clock almost every hour. At 5:30 I got up, showered and shaved. I still had to work to make a living, but work was the last thing on my mind. I had a hearty breakfast at the restaurant downstairs and drank several cups of coffee. I turned on my cell phone and waited. 7 hours have passed. At 7:30 I checked out of the motel and went to work, but only lasted half a day. That morning I checked my phone twice more, but there was no call from anyone. Why the hell did I carry a damn cell phone with me? My kids called me, but that was it. I quit work, went for a ride, and besides feeling sorry for myself and getting angry at the games Kate was playing, I started making some kind of plan to move forward on my own. I know she felt like a victim in this mess, but I now felt like a pawn, and I didn't like that one bit. I went crazy before I told myself that two people could play this game. My first stop was our bank. I took out 3/4 of our savings and checks, as well as 3 certificates of deposit for $2,000 that were kept in our safe deposit box. I opened an account in a new bank in my name only. If she wanted to play games, we would play games. Since she was at work and the children were at school, the house was left to me alone. It had only been 3 days, but it still looked the same. Even our bedroom looked neat and tidy. I found her stash of toys and lubes and thought about putting some ice cream on them for the sore muscles, but then decided against it. I packed 2 more suitcases with the clothes I need for the rest of the week, leaving the closet door and a few dresser drawers open just enough for her to know I was there. I thought about leaving my wedding ring glued to the countertop with one of our butcher knives. I figured it would get her attention, but it would probably escalate things too quickly, and then I'd have to pay someone to make up the damage, but it wouldn't be worth it. So, I took the keys to the house and left. I'm damn sure I didn't leave the keys to the house. I found a motel closer to work, checked in and waited. Just after 6:15 I received 2 calls and a disgusting message. "You took all our money from the bank, call me." I didn't bother calling her back. My back was the one that was now up. I tried to talk to her for months, but received only the cold shoulder. Well, I guess for her money spoke louder than flowers. Kate texted me 4 more times on Tuesday night, but I never responded to a single one. Maybe she'll see what it's like to try to talk to someone who ignores you. I slept great Tuesday night, and had breakfast at Denny's Grand Slam before heading to work. Children play such games, not adults, or at least they shouldn't. Kate's phone calls, emails at work, and text messages were relentless. I knew the kids were home from school at 4, so I called at 4:15 and spoke to them both. "Dad, I don't know what you did, but Mom is very angry with you. I haven't seen her this angry since you brought home the plasma TV." I chuckled, but they didn't think it was that funny. "Are you getting a divorce?" my daughter Angie asked, and this time I didn't have a clear answer for her. "I hope not," was all I could say. I wanted to say that I gave this bitch 3 options and she decided not to choose any of them, but I said nothing. After all, she was their mother. "Angie, worst case scenario, I'll be home on Friday and grab some more of my clothes. Maybe we'll figure something out by then." I was hopeful because I wasn't as confident as before. On Thursday morning, Kate's father, Doug, came to my office. "Steve, I think things between you and my daughter have gotten out of control. She says she's going to talk to a lawyer if you don't pay the money back. Doug, she's doing this. I'll make sure I spend every red cent on crap she'll never be able to get the money back from." "Doug, I begged, no, I fucking begged her to talk to me, but she decided not to do it. She says you cheated on her." "It's not like that, is it?" "Yes and no," I replied, and then told him the whole story, video and all. "I'm tired of telling this story. Look, I understand her point of view and yours, but is this worth ending the marriage over?" "Well, yes. This is what I tried to avoid, but Kate still didn't budge. She says I don't understand what I put her through, what about what she's putting us through? She doesn't believe me. The way it happened, even after I showed her on the computer that it was possible. She would rather hang me out to dry than see that this is even possible. Although her mother and I don't want to get involved in this matter, cooler heads should prevail, if for no other reason than you have 2 children. I completely agree with you. It's just that Kate can't hear anything I say, and the longer this goes on, the harder it will be to go back to the way things were before. I give up without a fight, but I can only fight so far and then, well, you know what will happen. Steve, let me talk to her and see if we can come up with something you can both live with. If not, I guess it's her life, and if she wants to screw it up, so be it. I was glad that I transferred all the money I had withdrawn from our joint account and hid it. It was the only trump card I had left. On Friday I was served with legal documents. They said I had to pay the money back within 24 hours or I would go to jail. We both knew it was nothing more than an empty threat. My name was on all the accounts, and we both knew that either of us could get all the money out of them. Regardless, I decided to go home and call her bluff. What else could she do to me, make me shoot? I was talking to 2 kids in the kitchen when Kate walked through the door. Children, go to your room. I need to talk to your father alone for a minute. They both looked at me as if I was about to walk the Green Mile. Steve, what did you do with all our money? She doesn't seem to have softened one bit. Did your father tell you what I would do if you met with a lawyer? Yes, is that so? Well, I just came here to pick up the rest of my clothes and tell you they're fucking gone. But if it's any consolation, I had a great time. Steve, don't even joke about this. You took over $35,000. The money belonged to both of us. It was our retirement savings and part of our kids' college fund. Kate, you and I probably won't be together anymore anyway. Hell, we won't even discuss any business anymore, and besides, I'd probably lose it all in a divorce. Also, when I leave for work tomorrow, and warn me that there will be no alimony or child support. And if you can't pay for the house solely with your income, you'll likely have to sell the house too. So if you don't mind, I'll take my things and leave you. Looks like we're both going to have a rough day tomorrow. I walked up the stairs with a box of black plastic garbage bags. She didn't let up while I collected the rest of my things. I decided to take everything to my parents' house because my motel room didn't have enough closet space. You know, I'm not kidding. I will divorce you if you don't return our money. I wouldn't ignore you, but right now I don't care what the hell you do. I've finally reached my limit. I finished packing and started carrying all the bags to the car. Thank you for the last 11 years, 3 months and 5 days. I had time to sum it all up. Even if she had asked, I would have had so many hours. So you don't even want to try anymore? Are you just going to walk out of our lives? I finally lost it. You really are one stupid bitch, you know that? I've been trying for 4 months to get you to at least talk to me. You constantly refused. I would have walked on hot coals to leave this behind, but you just didn't want to. Move on. I even tried to show you that this is possible. Again, you won't even think of meeting me halfway. Tomorrow I will be left without work, thanks to you, and along the way, who knows where, I simply won't have the strength to stay here, knowing that my stupid ex-wife let it all slip through her fingers. With that I left. I screwed up that night. I drank 6 packs of Corona and half a bottle of wine. I didn't have to work the next day, so other than changing the oil, this town would be seeing my ass by noon tomorrow. I think my actions were now driven by my anger. Although I thought that I looked at everything with a clear head, in reality this has not been the case for a long time. Anger tends to cloud your judgment. Well, that was the case in my case. When I returned to work on Monday, my boss, Randy, did not accept my resignation. Steve, relax, you have 3 weeks of vacation ahead. Take everything and call me when you get back. I told him I wouldn't be returning, but he insisted that I call him when I returned. I think because no one thought I was serious, that in itself drove me over the edge. My parents and hers told us to pull our heads out of our asses and sit down like 2 adults. It was well past that stage. I accept some of the blame, but not all that she placed on me. I'll be a couple 100 miles away tomorrow night. Kate was sitting on the hood of my car as I pulled out of the motel on Monday night. Just skipped town without even saying goodbye to Gary and Angie? I'll call and talk to them when I'm settled. What about us? Kate, we're gone. You took care of that. You just give up on everything because you're too stubborn to admit you did something you shouldn't have? Look, here's my last sentence. I'll meet you halfway after you admit what you did. Forgive you, and we will take what is left of our marriage and move on. I would do it if I did something wrong, but then what difference does it make? You'll never believe me anyway? Steve, look at it from my point of view. Would you believe me if I made up this story and if you had video evidence to the contrary? At least I'd give you the benefit of the doubt instead of ruining an 11-year marriage. I threw my bags into the car. Even Kevin admitted to fooling around with 2 prostitutes. But does he remember getting a blowjob when he passed out? She didn't have an answer to this question. If you haven't experienced it yourself, you'll never believe me. Okay, we'll do it at home right now. Kate, don't play games with me. Steve, my challenge to you on this is to either suck it up or just leave. She had no idea what she was getting into. An hour later, we were sitting at the kitchen table with 3 bottles of her favorite sparkling wine. You'll have to drink at least 2 of them. Are you sure about this? I'm sure. But when I prove to you that I'm right, I need you to admit that you were wrong and apologize to me. Then we can decide what to do next. Do you agree? So it began. My dad picked up Gary and Angie from school, so the kids weren't around when Kate started dinner. I thought it was a stupid idea, but once Kate got her head around something, there was no stopping her. The first bottle was gone quite quickly, and although she was feeling the effects, she was nowhere near where she intended to end up. 1.5 bottles made her dizzy, and she started to get a little angry, saying that she was sorry for being such a bitch. We haven't been there yet. After 2 bottles, she was shaken, but still somewhat conscious. We were close, so bottle number 3 was opened. I sipped a Corona and munched on a slice of pizza. One of us had to stay sober for this to work. At 2 3/4, Kate was holding on to her fingernails. She fought to stay with us, but almost lost her taste for wine. She was there. Everything we did from that moment on, she will never remember. Just drink the rest of the bottle. Then let's see where we are. It looked a little green around the gills. I prayed that she wouldn't get sick. To the bottom, she said, drinking the rest of the wine. Shocked is the only word. After 3 bottles of wine, she was still conscious, although we only had beer left. I went to the refrigerator to get her, but when I returned, her head was already lying on the kitchen table. It was reckless, more than stupid. She could have gotten alcohol poisoning. And for what? Just to prove a point? I already knew some of it, but she stubbornly refused to accept it. I carried her upstairs, muttering something I couldn't understand. I laid her down on the bed, took her clothes off, and did what I had to do to make sure she understood. Twice. I then wrote a long note on her stomach with a black marker, detailing exactly what I had done. I kissed her, told her I loved her, and left. I knew she'd never remember a damn thing, but it didn't matter. Without trust between us, there was nothing left but an empty shell of what was once something real. I took just enough money to last me for a while, and left the rest with Kate, giving it to my father to pass on. After all, I'm not a complete asshole. I didn't have a plan, I just knew I had to leave and start over a life that now seemed to be falling apart. Fargo, North Dakota, January. If you've never worked on an oil pipeline in the dead of winter, you haven't experienced the cold. The wind never stops, and there is nothing to do except freeze your ass off ice fishing or ride a snowmobile. It sounds tempting. Sometimes it's not what you know, but who you know. Greg, an old friend of my father's, had connections in the oil industry. After leaving Kodia, I called him, needing both work and his silence. The Alaska pipeline was out of reach, and the oil rigs in the Atlantic were a nightmare. So it was Fargo. The money wasn't much, but it was enough, and I didn't answer to anyone except the site manager. I rented a tiny room with a small kitchen and bathroom. He ate most of his meals outside the home, and sent about 30% of his salary to his father for the children, not Kate. I wrote letters, sent cards, and wished I had brought my laptop with me so I could send emails too. Maybe I would ask my father to come to the house and pick him up. My parents kept me updated on Gary and Angie's developments. During their visits to the children, they sent photos, hugs, and messages. But I made them promise never to tell Kate where I was. As far as I knew, I was already divorced due to abandonment, but neither of my parents ever mentioned it. They didn't talk about her at all, only about the children. Although life was difficult, for the first time in a long time I felt good. I was doing things I thought I could never do physically, and I was probably in the best shape of my life. Well, since I was in my early 20s anyway. I didn't even bother to cut the hair on my head or face. Within a year, my hair had completely grown back and I had a gorgeous beard. I had an ulterior motive for the beard, hoping that a little extra facial hair would help keep my face a little warmer. I had been working for 12 months straight when I decided I needed a break. "I'll be coming home soon for a short visit, please don't tell anyone," were the only instructions I left for Mom and Dad. I returned on Thursday just before midnight and reunited with my parents for a bit until about 3 in the morning, when I couldn't keep my eyes open for a second. After more than 16 hours on the road, what I needed most was sleep. At noon, my mother looked into my room and said that dinner was on the table. I needed to shower, get dressed, and go downstairs. I never argued with my mother. With my hair in a ponytail and wearing shorts and a t-shirt, I looked nothing like the businessman I used to be. I looked in the mirror and thought I should be riding a Harley instead of the 4-door Kia I drove away in 13 months ago. With over a year of pipeline work under my belt, I figured that when I decided to come back, I could probably sign with a more experienced team and make a lot more money. 30 seconds after my feet hit the kitchen floor, I had 2 children hanging from my waist. There were hugs and kisses. Tears were shed and an apology finally came out. If they were still angry at me, they didn't show it. Lunch was on the table and stories and experiences were exchanged. I never raised their mother, and neither did they. Even though I wanted to know how she was doing, I was afraid to ask. I've been with a few women over the past year. They were there purely to fill a need, that's all. Maybe I would stop by and say hello before leaving again. "Dad, you're nothing like you were when you left," Gary said, stuffing his face. "I like the way he looks," Angie added. "He looks like one of those lumberjacks you see on TV. Kids, where I was, it wasn't a TV show, I can promise you. By the way, how is your mother?" So I said it, and judging by the looks on everyone's faces, maybe I shouldn't have brought it up. "She's fine, still working at the same place she was before." That told me, damn it. "Dad, did you tell her that I came to visit?" "Son, the kids are here, aren't they?" How could she not know? It was a stupid question, and since no one was telling me what I wanted to hear, I ignored it. I spent a wonderful day with my children. They stuck to me like glue, and I was almost afraid that if this didn't happen, I would disappear again. When Dad said he needed to take them home, they weren't happy. "Why don't you come home with us? You can see your mom and have dinner with us." Guys, if I know one thing for sure, it's that I'm the last person in the world your mom wants to see. Don't worry, I won't go anywhere for a while. The rest of my tools are out of the garage before I go. I couldn't understand the look they gave me, but 13 long months passed and I had to learn how to talk to children all over again. After Dad left with my kids, I ran into Mom. "Mom, no embellishments, how are they doing?" Things were a little tense for a while and there was a lot of anger around. "Your father has been on everyone's bad side for months. In the end, they realized that it wasn't all your fault." Although Kate took it quite hard. "Good. Stephen Moore, that's a terrible thing to say." My mother scolded me. "Mom, it shouldn't have been like that. She just didn't give me a break. She was the one who pushed me away. It wasn't Kate who gave me a disapproving look. But she was the one who ended our marriage, not me." My mother wouldn't let it go. "The good book says that Jesus forgave the men who nailed him to the cross." She pointed at me. "And you can't forgive a woman who made some bad decisions?" Mom, I asked myself this question every night for the past year. I never found a good answer. At least, even before I left, she knew that all sorts of things can happen, even if you don't remember them. I gave it up, and so did she. I spent Saturday meeting up with a few friends in town. No one recognized me. I had fun with it. I met Kevin and Amy at a local bar, and picked up the beer as they were delivered. They stared at me for a good half hour before Kevin finally came over to thank me. "Do I know you?" he asked hesitantly. "Do you still have problems when you pass out?" "Holy cow! Steve!" We laughed and hugged. He called Amy, and with them I felt like I had never left. "Have you seen Kate yet?" Amy asked, and then she regretted it. "But no." "Steve, didn't the kids tell you?" Kevin quickly interrupted. "Amy, it's none of our business." "So, Steve, what's with the hair and beard?" The look Kevin gave Amy after that told me something was wrong. My mom, now Amy, were all hiding something from me. Saturday night, I slept like a baby, only to wake up early on Sunday morning and go to church. I don't hate church, I just stopped seeing the point in it. God didn't answer my prayers when I asked for help before leaving. Because he turned away from me, I did the same to him. Nothing has changed. Mom wanted to show me to everyone, knowing that I left under not very good circumstances. But now I am back and looking better than ever. Mom was always proud of me. Sunday was usually the day for family dinner, lunch, and everyone brought something. Since it was my first visit in more than a year, it was nice to be home, at least for a little while. Where was I going to go next? What happened to the hair and beard? No personal details, including whether I was dating someone. I don't have a lot of free time, and not all the attractive women flock to Fargo, North Dakota, especially in the winter, I explained to them. Mom was putting out food when she dropped the bomb. I think she waited for everyone to arrive, so I had to stay. "I invited Gary, Angie, and Kate to lunch today." She braced herself for my reaction. "No problem. I can't hide from her forever, especially since we have children together." Mom gave me a double answer. "Besides, I need to go home to get the rest of my things before I leave." Who was I kidding? More than 13 months had passed, and I really wanted to see her. I thought about her more times than I'd like to admit as I lay alone in my cold bed and replayed in my mind how everything had fallen apart. And then there was the night when I left. I really think Kate expected me to still be around when she woke up, but by then all I wanted to do was prove myself right. I think I did it pretty well before I left. So I waited. I noticed Gary first when he came out on deck, followed by Angie. I hugged each of them tightly, lifting Angie over my head and spinning her around. She laughed, or rather screamed, until I let her down. "Mom is here," Angie began. "Dad, she doesn't recognize you." "Dad, please don't get angry and argue in front of everyone." "Please?" Her "please" was more of a question than a statement. "Don't worry, I won't embarrass you, or even myself for that matter. I'll be polite and put on a happy face, okay?" Gary smiled at me. Angie wasn't sure. Why was everyone afraid that I would make a fool of myself? When Kate didn't come out onto the terrace, I excused myself from the group of cousins and friends I was reminiscing with and went looking for her. I found her near the kitchen talking to my mom. She looked the same as I remembered, maybe a little thinner and her hair a little shorter, but it suited her. As always, the mother was holding someone's child in her arms. It seemed that at these gatherings she was always holding someone's child in her arms. So I took a deep breath and put one foot in front of the other. "It's been a while, Kate," I said back to her as Mom watched me approach. She turned around, looked, and did a second take. "If it weren't for your voice, I would never have recognized you. You look good, different but good." There were no hugs, no handshakes, not even kisses on the cheek. Okay, I'm not sure what I expected, but it looks like what I got was the same Kate I left many months ago, an insensitive woman who had virtually no contact with me in the months before I actually left. Or maybe she was just trying to succeed. I laughed at the thought and said "bitch" to myself. I tried to say something to make this situation easier. "I love what you did with your hair, it looks beautiful." Damn, I was like a dumb teenager trying to say words without making a complete fool of myself. I almost lost control and crashed. Hell, I was probably about to start talking about the weather next time when my mom interrupted. Here, she said to Kate. Take David, I need to check the food in the oven. Look, you two need to talk, and you can't do it while they're listening to me and everyone else. Why don't you go for a walk downstairs? By the park? We won't eat for at least 45 minutes. I will make sure the children are looked after. Looks like we had no choice. Mom took care of it. I expected Kate to hand the baby back to my mom, but she simply lifted him into her arms and walked toward the front door without even looking back at me. I think she took responsibility, as always. I almost stopped and turned around, but I promised my children that I would behave even if it killed me. The park was across the street, half a block away. We walked in complete silence. Perhaps she was waiting for the moment before she pounced on me, only this time I was ready. As we approached a group of 4 picnic tables, she stopped and turned to face me. Her expression didn't show anger. I wasn't sure what it was. Fine? So what? I answered. What the hell do you mean? So what? You left in the middle of the night almost 14 months ago without saying a word, and now you have nothing to say? How about an apology? Do you have any idea what your leaving did to your children? They cried for several days. I know you were angry at me, but taking it out on them was unforgivable. She gave it to me with all her might. I'm glad you lied about the money. You were right. I would have lost my house. Steve, aren't you the least bit sorry? I knew I would have to answer this question, and I rehearsed my answer 1,000 times. Are you sorry for making my life hell? Do you regret ruining what was once a wonderful marriage? You still have the same shitty attitude, and to be honest, no, I'm not sorry. I left. Okay, for a minute I thought you were going to trick me. This took me by surprise. I think I went a little overboard. A little? God, Kate, you were a damn shrew. Okay, maybe it was, but you weren't that lily white yourself. Listen, I don't want to bring up the past. He's finished. We can't repeat it. Somehow, things got out of control when you made it clear to me that you were done with me. Steve, don't say words to me, I never said that. All I said was that I didn't believe you about what happened that night. Damn, is that all you can say, Kate? I have to give you credit. I never in a million years thought you'd be able to drink those 3 bottles. I thought I might just have to do a run to the store when I finally pass out. I was on a roll. Now the $10,000 question. Do you remember anything? She was still silent, but she couldn't take her eyes off me when she finally answered me in a quiet voice. Okay, you were right. I would never have believed it, but you proved your point. God, have you ever? Did you have to write your Dear Kate letter on my belly with a permanent black marker? First of all, your 2 children saw it before me the next morning, because when they got home I was still sleeping. Secondly, I couldn't read what you wrote even in the mirror, so I had to mirror it twice. I smiled. I had never thought about it, and the thought of Kate running around trying to read what I wrote gave me a little extra pleasure. Don't look so smug, because I saved the best for last, Mr. Almighty. You were right, I didn't remember anything after the second bottle. It didn't take me long to realize what had happened. The next morning, but by then you were long gone, by the looks of it you had a good time. She was smiling now. Did I react in any way that night? Believe it or not, you liked it. Your body floated with the flow, and for a while I thought you were actually awake. Needless to say, this is not the case. I was smiling now, or smiling until her last volley. Well, if I knew what you were planning, I would have talked to you about it then. You see, Steve, since we weren't doing anything, I went off the pills for about a month to give my body a break. Here, she said, handing me the child. Say hello to your son, David. I looked at her and then back at the child. No way. You're not going to try to pawn someone else's child on me as if it were mine. I'm not that stupid. I thought you might say that, so I did a DNA test on him, Gary and Angie. And guess what? They all have the same mother and father, can you imagine? This was not the conversation I should have had with Kate. Now you have the same options I have. We can go back and live as a couple again and go to counseling, or we can separate for real and get a divorce. And let me be clear, I don't want that option, no matter what you think. If you remember, you never chose any of my options. You just left me hanging. Okay, I admit I was wrong. I was a pain in the ass, but you hurt me. You humiliated me in front of all our friends and then continued to deny everything even after I saw it with my own eyes. You know the bachelor party was directly or indirectly responsible for 3 divorces, not even counting our breakup. I'm giving you the same options and the same 3 days you gave me. I just hope you make a better choice than you did. That's what I did. Well, with that being said, we need to get back before they send out a search party. We walked back with David in our arms. Who else knows about this? All. Think about it, Steve. You will leave and leave me pregnant. All our friends thought you were an indifferent louse until I explained to them how it happened, or thought it happened. Then, when you didn't return, our parents and friends all rushed to my aid. I was adamant that they wouldn't tell you, because your father knew you would come running. I didn't want you to be on those terms. Still, your father knew you would come back, he just wasn't sure. When? That's why no one mentioned you when I asked. What were they going to say? Oh, by the way, you met Kate the night you left and you had another son? Why did you call him David? Well, David killed the giant. I thought I'd need David to solve our problems with the giants when you finally decided to come back. You're back, aren't you? I didn't have an answer to this question. My mom watched us walk in and seemed relieved that at least we didn't kill each other. She came over and took David away from me and told me that I would have plenty of time later to get to know my son. You two go eat something before it's all gone. We watched each other for the rest of the day, never finding a chance to talk alone again. Dad, are you mad at Mom? Angie asked, pulling up a chair next to mine. Gary and I wanted to tell you, but they wouldn't let us. You'll like it, David. He is a good child and almost never cries. She desperately tried to get her way. I'm not mad at David. How can you be mad at a child? Kate is another matter. At 4 o'clock the brunch ended. Everyone said goodbye, not knowing if they would see me again. Kate said she had a million things to do at home, and she had to leave too. The kiss and hug I received from Kate were the first she had given me voluntarily in almost 17 months. That's how long it's been since we've been in love and together. Remember, you have 3 days. I wonder if it sounded so harsh and insensitive when I said those exact words to her then. I walked them all to her car and got another kiss for my troubles. My children's eyes were as big as saucers. I guess I hoped they would see me again tomorrow. Well, how did it go? Asked my mother, stopping what she was doing for a moment. It was a shock. Is there anything else anyone would like to share? No, I think that's about it. My father said with a goofy grin on his face. What if I hadn't decided to return home? Was anyone going to tell me? My father stopped stacking chairs on the bridge and looked at me. We would probably have to do it eventually. We hoped that sooner or later you would come to your senses and return on your own. We just didn't think it would take this long. He turned away from me and went back to folding chairs. I could tell he was unhappy with my long absence. Look, honey, Mom added, you've both made some big mistakes, but Kate loves you, and I think deep down you still love her. You two have breathed new life into your problems, and this child doesn't deserve it. In short, you're a good person. I know you'll make the right decision, I just know it. There is nothing better than when your mother tries to force you to make a decision that she wants. But for me it wasn't that easy. I called Kate and asked her for a week, not 3 days, to make a decision. I could tell from her voice that she did not want to agree, although reluctantly. I think she knew I was seriously considering what she told me. I spent most of the next week considering my options. What I found was not good. My old job was long gone, and although my former boss gave me a great letter of recommendation, there were very few good jobs in the current economy. I had moved on from my old life, and now I, along with the rest of my family, was paying the price. No one was hiring, at least for what I was looking for, and without work or should I say we, couldn't survive. I sent home 30% of what I earned and put 20% in the bank, but even with that savings it wouldn't last long. I felt left out again and didn't enjoy it any more the second time around. Kate and I talked. I spent every free moment with Gary, Angie, and David, but after a week I still had no idea what I was going to do. Added to this was the pressure of knowing that I was running out of time. On the day of the decision, I invited Kate to dinner. I looked at all the options and even talked to my parents to get their opinion. Life sucks sometimes, and I've been having too many of those. Life sucks sometimes. Days lately. Dinner was good. I even asked her to dance a couple of slow songs in the living room. We were avoiding the issue we were going to talk about, and I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't happy. Enough already. Are you going to stay or are you going to go? What the hell are you going to do? Talk to me, for Christ's sake. She almost screamed at that moment. As I said before, winters in Fargo are terrible. This winter was no exception. The new crew chief is preparing me for the position of foreman, which will open in about a year. This raise would earn me 20% more than I was making now, and with the huge raise I got when I came back, I was making more than I had made in a long time. Life is not a fairy tale, and sometimes it doesn't go as we would like. Sometimes you have to do something not because you want to, but because you know it's right. It was late, I was cold, my back hurt, and I was in a bad mood after an 18-hour shift. I stopped, had a snack, and headed to my room. The water was never so hot that it didn't chill my bones, but such was life on the oil pipeline in mid-February. I climbed onto the bed and listened to the crunch of my joints, straightening my legs and stretching my back. Even through her flannel pajamas I could feel her warmth, and it was wonderful. Your hands are like ice cubes, watch where you put them, she said as I pulled her close to me. What time is it now? Right after 2. Do you miss me? I asked, kissing her neck. I was ready a few hours ago when you called and said you needed to work. Right now all I want to do is sleep. Sure, I can't cheer you up? I responded as my hands caressed her body, warming them in the process. The room was almost dark, all I could see were silhouettes, but I didn't need light for what I wanted to do. Well, what does it cost you, B? IG boy? She said, rolling onto her back to face me, already awake. How about I come visit you the next 2 times? Mister, you made a deal, she said, attacking me. There was no way Kate could get out from under that blanket. So, what I wanted to do, and what we ended up doing, was done under these warm blankets. I didn't care. I was holding my wife in my arms again, and even making love to her on the cold, hard floor would have been normal for me. Life was not easy for us. After talking and arguing a lot, we decided to try again. For me, the decision to give it another chance was primarily because of the children, especially David, who I barely knew. We both knew it wouldn't be so easy this time. We blew this up a long time ago. I returned to the house and life was great for the entire week and a half. Then I had to go back. I had no choice. Money rules, and without it we couldn't survive, at least not like we used to. With the salary increase, I earned more than in my previous office job, but the conditions were not nearly as good. The 2 of us traveled every month. In a month, the kids will be visiting their grandparents, and she will be visiting me for a long weekend, admitting that the cold Fargo winters were her punishment for her relentless tormenting behavior. Next month I would fly to visit her and the children for about 4 days. When she approached, we almost didn't get out of bed, catching up as best we could. I received some reimbursement for travel expenses, but that was the only way it could work because Kate said she was not moving to North Dakota. Our plans now include long-term goals, one of which is to find me a job within driving distance of our home. Are we back to where we were a couple of years ago? Yes and no. We still love each other, but we both kick ourselves for letting this get completely out of control. And now we are paying for it. Our kids love that we're back together, but they hate that I'm away from home most of the time. It will get better someday. I keep telling them. One of the guys from the film crew is getting married in a month. His friends are throwing him a bachelor party on Saturday night. When they approached me asking for a donation and wanted to know if I would come, I just smiled, handed them a 20 and said no. Been there, done that, and it makes my butt freeze. God, I hate Fargo.